Thank you again for joining us as we continue the conversation about relationships and that marriage is hard work. It's been a good conversation. So we want to kind of pick up the conversation, and I'm actually going to bring into the conversation some off camera conversations that have been happening, because really what I want to do is get to the true essence. As we do these podcasts, we're not just having conversation to have conversation. We're having conversation to have impact, to make sure that we're sharing something that can make a difference in your relationship. So I just want to circle back, because Pastor Tony, you spoke of something that it's not part of my question set, but I thought it was really good to share. And so you were talking about a pivotal change in your relationship. Do you mind sharing that with the rest of us?
Yeah, it was just I had lived my whole life based on a worldly idea about emotions and feelings were the truth. So that if I didn't feel it,
right,
or I didn't have that emotion behind it, it wasn't true. And God dealt with me and about life and death and the power of it being in the tongue. And I went on this, I don't know if you call it a journey, but I went on this journey or this, I don't know, passage where I started trusting God with my words and my thoughts. And so that in my marriage and about my amazing, beautiful wife,
right,
whether I felt it or not, if it was of God, I just spoke it. You know, whatever is true, whatever is lovely, whatever is beautiful, if anything is worthy to be thought of, he said, think on these things.
Yes.
And I started just doing that. And then I started publicly declaring my love for her. And I started publicly declaring how faithful I was to her, even though in my heart at times I didn't feel that. But my faith caught up with my words. My faith caught up with my declaration. And all of a sudden, they came to this one place where they matched. And that's all faith is. Substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. But before I could ever feel it, before I could ever have an emotion behind it, I believed it and I spoke it over our marriage, what she means to me. And people didn't know this early on. I didn't feel a lot of that stuff I was saying. I didn't. I would talk about
this is the real talk.
I would talk about what she meant. This is when I first started this journey. I would talk about what she meant to me and how much I love her and how faithful. No, all that wasn't true in the sense of feeling.
Yes.
It was true in the sense of faith. Because he said, I want you to just say it. I want you to speak it. And I want you to believe it. And let me do the rest. And man, I can't remember the day. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
But one day came where everything I said, I felt it. Everything I said, the emotions matched it. Because I gave it over to faith in Jesus Christ. That the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart. Notice now, not my behavior,
right?
The words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. And sometimes I think what's missing in marriages is we're waiting to feel before we declare. We're waiting to see before we declare. And so we lose out on the faith aspect of love that says, God, I'm trusting you with this love. And I'm declaring this is how it is, even though I don't see it, even though I don't feel it. And I know you're going to bring everything into fruition to where the actualization of my words are going to meet in your name and be real in that day. And I'm going to feel those emotions.
Pastor E, I want to get your take on it. As do you recall this journey? And then I want to comment as someone seeing it, because I did recognize and I did see it. So do you have any thoughts you want to share about the time when he was constant, he was consistent about recognizing you and adoring?
It annoyed me.
It annoyed her.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Only because remember I talked about me being guarded,
Right.
right? You know, and so flattery, you know, I knew that I had a husband that can flatter me with words. He's just gifted
Yes.
like that. He's been gifted from day one from that. He writes poetry. You know, he flirts with me. He, you know, so he does all that, you know, for me, and it's a part of our relationship. And it's one of the things, you know, that I do, you know, low key like.
Low
But
key, like.
but it was a point, I think, in our marriage where things were rough, and I felt like, oh, it was
Hypocritical.
yeah, like,
Mhm.
oh, you
Okay.
say all these different things, and you know, I mean this, but you know, you're short tempered. You forget in 5 minutes that you don't want. Don't you write me another doggone poem? Don't say nothing else kind about me from the microphone. You know, and so that space, I owned that for a while, not knowing. You know, it was a self preservation for him. You
Mhm.
know, trying to see me in a light,
Mhm.
or him growing, you know, not knowing all of that because I was just living in my offense. You know, I was
Right.
living in my offense. And, you know, I couldn't see like him seeing that all those things that he's saying today, you know.
I was fighting, baby, the demons that were trying to tell me to walk away and to leave. And and so I didn't have any more. I didn't have any other source but God.
Mhm.
I had run out of the words, the poetry, the all I had was God,
Right.
Right.
because I knew I was failing, and I knew
Mhm.
it was failing, and I knew I was thinking about things like divorce, and so I ran out of Tonyism,
Okay.
and all I had left was trusting God, and that's what he said. He said, "Now you got nothing left,
Mhm.
so now you got to declare this thing and trust me
Mhm.
to bring a healing." And it was, and we fought about that because she was. See, the thing about it is she wasn't wrong.
Mhm.
She would say, "You get up there and say all these things about me, and yet when we have disagreements, we," and she wasn't wrong, but she wasn't understanding. If I don't do that, this marriage is going to be over. If I don't trust God, if I don't openly declare my love for you in Christ, it's going to be over. And I knew I was fighting those demons, and it's a beautiful thing because, baby, he showed me that when you run out of you, he's right there. And he put a love in my heart for you. I'm just saying, like, you can't even understand, Eleshia Cash. Like I wake up in the morning and I pray, and I'm strategizing every day about, like, it makes you mad when I say this, and she'll tell you. Like I talked to her about when she's 70 and what I want her to have and when I'm gone. And she's like, "Don't talk about death. You talk about death so much." But it's not death to me. See, I don't look at it's like a dream come true, a prayer come true, because she's all I ever want. I wanted my life to mean something.
Mhm.
She gives my life meaning now. Like I have a reason why I'm working.
Yeah.
I have a reason why I'm trying to gain wealth. I have a reason why I'm trying to be an honorable man.
Mhm.
And that is to leave her a legacy. And before that, I didn't have any purpose. I always thought I was going to have money in my life, but it didn't feel fulfilling because it was just going to be me with money. Well, now I have purpose behind it, which is to love her and leave her a legacy that even after I'm gone, somehow I'm taking care of her and being a great husband. So I apologize for those times.
Let me just say as an observer, because I noticed it. And I watched you say it. Then I'd watch her, how she received it. And initially it was one of, okay, something there. You working out something. But the more you did it, the more I could see the earnest and sincerity and kind of an acceptance on her part. It felt like there was some adoration. And what I loved about that, though, and what I love about just being so close to you guys, is you're literally walking it out. What I'm really mindful of is you're still people, you're still human, you still make mistakes, you still have to go through the struggles. And I think sometimes in marriages where it becomes difficult is we don't see someone going through it. And then how do you work through it? And I think that this, again, is an opportunity for people to know you're not spotless, that you have struggled and you come through this thing, but Jesus has been at the center of it. And so the plug would be real quick here before we get to the next question, is just that it starts with Jesus. It starts with your love for him, because then he shows us how to love one another. And so you guys are the epitome of that. And so I just encourage people, if you don't have that in your life, that you seek that, because that's where it helps you to grow through some difficult challenges that come up in marriage. Your marriage vow said, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer. Now, when you break that thing down, that's some serious vows, because it's very possible that you will experience sickness. It is possible that you will have to deal with some financial challenges, and a number of situations that can come. So I thank you guys for your vulnerability, because I think it's going to help someone to get real. Let egos go, because at the end of the day, you want to save it, because God can do an amazing work in a marriage. With that said, I want to ask a question about, it's called fubbing. and I want to get your input on it, but let's first define it. Let me make sure I get it right. You can be in someone's presence, but you doing this.
Oh, he has it bad.
Oh,
he has it bad.
What does that impact does that have on the relationships?
Oh gosh, sometimes I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna get him back later, because he's gonna be looking for his shoes, his watch, his phone, his keys, and I'm gonna pick up my phone and act like I don't hear him, and just scroll or text or do something like And he can do it with the kids too. They can be around here tearing each other up, and he's sitting right there just doing just that. And for me, I'm like, okay, I'm speaking to you. I would like your undivided attention. I can be right into a point like it's good. Now it's like he goes. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can't put your phone down for 2 seconds. And I'm explaining, I'm all excited about something. And then he goes, I'm listening. And I said, well, what did I just say? You said, he can't tell me what I said. So you guys throw it in the chat. Let me know how y'all feel about it. It's definitely something that we struggle with, it gets on my nerves. He has nothing to say. You have something to say?
Well, that's interesting, because I remember my husband and I would go to dinner, and people would be sitting together, but they'd be on their phones, and that would drive me crazy.
Yes. What did we come for? We could have did that in the car.
That's exactly what I would say. And I says, this is a time to just shoot the breeze, talk about anything, laugh and everything. Yes. And people in their whole expressions and demeanor is like,
yes.
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 And that bothers me, because that's an opportunity to build on the relationships and intimate moments. Because some people may be leaving kids at home, and you get away and you're on your phone. What becomes so important about the phone? I'm not trying to single you out, Pastor, but
it's addictive. I think it's an addiction now.
Yeah.
I think like we were even just having family night watching a movie, and so it's like, oh, where's my phone? Like they're about to freak out. And so I think it's something, it's some type of addiction now, that we have to be touching it, feeling it all the time. Like the human interaction now has not become like the primary focus for
Yes.
even dinner time. So now, like, okay, let everybody put their phones away. Let's sit down and actually have dinner and talk to find out, like, how was your day? How are you feeling? What are you into? Let me, like, really vibe and get together without checking a text message, checking your email, scrolling on social, because that's pretty much what you're doing, right?
Right. Right. I think that's a good point.
I don't know. Y'all drop it in the chat and tell
Yeah.
us, how.
Do you do it?
Right.
Not calling you out, but I think that can really, again, like you said, there's opportunities to reconnect.
Yes.
And when we're so caught up on our phones, and I did hear, I don't know what news story it was, that they have developed these apps to just like, you're used to the ding, 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 ding. And I started to really pay attention to that. And so now when people says, well, did you get my text? No. I'm more cognizant of when to put the phone to the side.
Right.
And not get so
Absolutely.
absorbed. I have gotten a little addicted to scrolling on Instagram, but we're gonna get that under control. Get that.
But the other thing too is these phones have turned into like computers. Like there are
Yes.
many computers too. I have to tell my mom that a lot. She's like, you didn't answer my phone. I was like, because I was emailing or I was doing things like, I'm using my phone for multiple layers of things. I have the Bible on there. So then there's YouTube on there. And so I may be listening to content or re-listening to a message. I have Audible on there. I may be listening to a book or listening to a podcast or watching a movie. It's just so many different things that, that the phone does. So I do see where, we have to have a fast next, you maybe need to do a 21-day phone fast.
Good luck with that. Drop in the chat if you can do that. Especially your kids. What
maybe
that looks like.
21 hours. How about we start with hours first? Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. One of our earlier conversation, we talked about some of the challenges against relationships and what leads to divorce. And I kind of wanted to circle back on that and just dive in a little bit deeper because there was so much to that I think that we really want to give it a little bit more space. So let's talk a little bit more about those reasons that lead us to divorce.
One of the main things I think the number one research topic is finances, and so you want to lead in as a financial expert? No, you go ahead.
I mean, being a financial expert and explaining why fools get divorced because finances are totally different. I can explain money all day. I can't explain why fools don't know how to act with each other about money. Okay, so that's why I'm not an expert. That's why I didn't mind you going first.
Well, I think sometimes, the way finances can get in the way is, let's just be real. Money can really be a sore spot. Not having enough, having too much, person not doing right by the money.
Yes.
I think you almost left me one time, Pastor Tony, when I ran the credit card up, and then he paid it off. Then I ran it up again, and it was like he was just distraught. We had to have some serious counseling surrounding it, and so everyone is not fortunate to be able to bounce back from that. That is a very
So when you say bounce back.
Okay.
Let's talk about bouncing back. Let's make sure we approach the bounce and the back.
Okay.
Because see, that's the problem right there. That how do we bounce and then how do we come back? Because when I come to you and tell you what you did and you don't want to own it, then there's no bounce and ain't no way we coming back. And that's usually the problem. The person don't want to. So that's what she and I went through. I wanted her to own and she fighting it and giving me 1,000 reasons why. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, man, you can't. You got to own this, because the cost sometimes is years that it takes to come back from
Yes.
things like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and the person who is guilty is saying, well, I did it in a month. Yeah, you did the action in a month, but to bounce back,
Yeah.
it's going to be years. Like,
Yes.
you can run up a car $5,000 in 6 months, and that same car can take you 3-4 years to come back from. And so what I would say to people who are in similar situations where you are the primary cause of the financial deficit, you can't tell them to just get over it. And you can't say to them, we still talking about that? Yeah, because we're still paying the bill. Say, every month I pay the bill, I want to talk about it. And you have to be one in love that says, I can understand it. Not now, if they're beating you up, and I'm not saying that, but if it's just something they want to talk about, you can't say, you know, I don't want to talk about it. We already talked. No. And I think that goes to that communication piece too, because communication is the center of it all. So if we can't even communicate about our affection, intimacy, love, finances, you know, how do we bounce back? How do we?
We even had some couples that hide money, you know,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
or don't want to contribute to the bills, you know, that type of thing.
Where they do that at?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
None of my house.
It just
We
it
have
happens,
that.
you know, where one couple is stressing because the other couple can contribute,
One
but
person.
and don't want to contribute, or you know, or have a different opinion on what contributing looks like. So all those different dynamics happen, or you know, overspending and not, you know, looking at the future, or not willing to bring in more income in the home when there's opportunities to bring in more income. So I mean, you have so many different dynamics that finances are wrapped into. And that's why it's important for you to have a vision for your
Yeah,
finances.
that's it. And you said we're going to talk about that.
Right. Vision is so important just in your marriage, period, or in relationships. You know, you want to, when you're connecting with a person, make sure that, and we're going to dive into some vision things coming up soon, but make sure when you're casting vision that the financial umbrella is a part of it, right? And so you're communicating, that goes back to that communication piece. You're communicating what that looks like, that picture, what's the vision for our finances. And so then at that moment it's a tell. So for those of you that are, you know, are linking up now, or thinking about getting married, or, you know, are engaged and you're on the front end of it, make sure that you have, those are discussions that you want to walk through your premarital counseling. Don't brush over it, because sometimes we want to brush over because we want to get down the aisle. We just trying to get to the wedding day. We want to have this big wedding, and so we want to make sure we brush over it. No, because something's gonna happen, right? You know.
And then there's a lot of people who think their current situation will always be their current situation. Right. And so when I'm in counseling with them, and this irritates me as a counselor, I'm trying to tell them that there are going to be worst case scenarios, and they're talking to me like, I don't know what I'm talking about. They're never going. So I'm saying, but what happens if we'll cross that? No, you don't want to cross that bridge when you get there.
And people really say that. Oh, wow. No. They don't want to address anything that is like a scenario based. They only want to deal in their current reality, and that's just not.
That's not how life works.
It's not life be life, and so, you know, in a marriage, you're going to have differences on raising kids, or differences on careers and things that may happen. Like, you know, one spouse may be working, the other spouse may not be working, you know, and then you're going to have, one spouse may be ill and the other spouse may be the one that has to be the caretaker. I mean, you have all different type of dynamics when it comes to marriage. And so when it goes back to that, in sickness and health, to death do us part, you know, that concept is really, 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 really for real. And then there's this other concept too, is the two must become one. So when the two are becoming one, sometimes there are some traumas that we experience individually, as we have grown up, or or childhood like things that have happened to us that have shaped our perceptions of relationships. Yes. Then we have these wounds that we all bring to the table, right? And so the wounds are important because you have to be sensitive to your spouse's experience and your spouse's wounds. Because if you think you don't have it, you don't need to have empathy in a marriage, then you're not going to last long. That right
That's
there
right.
is a key component to
That's
divorce
right.
because you have to be able to identify with, or not even identify, but lean in and show some empathy to the fact that their upbringing. Think about how much therapists get paid now. And a lot of times people are going to therapy as adults for things that happened to them when they were children, right?
That's what we went through.
Yes.
We grew up differently with money.
Yes.
That's what our problem was.
Right.
And so our theology around
Yes.
money was different.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. First of all, okay, let me just talk about. Oh, geez, it takes
Dropping the
special,
comments in the chat.
Oh
Go
my
ahead,
God.
drop 'em.
It's funny now, but there were some highs and lows in our marriage. It takes a special person to be married to Tony Cash.
I'm that guy.
He's definitely that guy.
I'm that guy.
And when we first got married, it was just like, oh my gosh, he didn't want to turn on the air. I was sweating. We didn't have cable. I never forget that time Pastor Ryan came over to watch the game. He didn't know we didn't have cable. And so Tony had antennas. Y'all remember the antenna with the with the ears?
The ears, yes.
And he's up there stumping the floor and moving. Y'all know y'all used to stump the floor and move them antenna ears trying to get the game. And so if you know anything about Pastor Ryan, he's all things football. He's like, Red, you got no cable. He was so mad he couldn't get a picture of the game. I thought it was gonna fall out because he had no cable.
Remember, he said he going to the church board for we gonna get you some cable.
He was, and so this journey about what our finances look like. He was just so tight on them coins, and I just didn't grow up like that. If I wanted it, we had it, I'd go out and get it, and then if not, then I'd swipe a card. And he's just like, no. So I just thank God for his patience,
But that the root of it, what she didn't know,
Right.
and it was age for both of us.
Yes.
She couldn't, like she says this today, it made no sense that to her that I was doing it for her.
Mhm.
To her, it was an attack, almost like I'm always at that age when she couldn't fathom he's doing it for me. Like
Future was just so hard. Like, I need something now.
yeah,
Like,
but I always was thinking her.
right.
Like I was always saying, okay, because I'm not a materialistic person. That's a difference. And she's right. She liked at that time a little more material things. Well, I'm a person who I could spend all day walking at Piedmont Park. I always been this way with you, Jeanette, whereas everybody else may say, let's go somewhere. Well, I could spend all day walking with you at Piedmont Park. And I mean, I'm just happy. And it's like all I did was walk with him. So,
but it's because he had to spend no money.
correct.
So
But
would go out. We would go to dinner. I'm gonna take you to dinner, and we would go to dinner, and he would look at the menu. He said, "Oh, you get what you want." Wait a second. What do you want? I'm gonna have some water. And it's not because the Joker don't have no money. He got the money.
Right.
It's because he don't want to spend it, and he's just like, "Oh, I can make this at home." It's just stuff like that. So at first, it used to aggravate me so much, because I want to enjoy dinner and do things with him and things like that, and he would eat before he go or eat when we get back home. You want to treat me, stuff like that. We go out to dinner with couples. Everybody order something. He'll get him. Oh, just get me a glass of water. And it's not because he doesn't have the money. It's because he don't want to spend it. Now that used to bother me, but in that 20 years in, it don't bother me no more. I'm like, he ain't gonna order nothing. I'm gonna get and
I'm using my Nikki face.
Lord help us. So only 20 years can do that, so
So you passed the threshold. We're gonna just do this thing for life.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but the thing about it is the communication.
Yes.
It go because if you're not understood, you're not communicating.
Right.
And so you got to find a way to help get your spouse to understand you. Like, because you can make a lot of sense. Like I don't know if you know Lebanese, but I could make a lot of sense in Lebanese right now.
There would be no.
But you would be looking at me like, I'm sure what you're saying, Pastor Tony, that wasn't a curse word. It was close, but I don't understand you. I had to learn a language and a way that she could understand where I was coming from. Because I was just a hardliner and she wasn't grasping that. But when I started saying things in a certain way and blah, blah, and I said, oh, she responds to this terminology and these words. Now, and I mean this with all sincerity, when it comes to talking about money, she could do her own. She sends me articles. And sometimes I'm working going, you ain't got nothing else to do. And she's sending me financial articles. I'm like, okay, thank you, I guess. I mean, is that a hint? Right. She could do it now.
Awesome. So as I look at the list, and there's, I looked up and there was just a litany of different reasons that people get divorced. So we kind of addressed infidelity, the financial issues, bad communication, lack of commitment. Let's talk about that one for a minute. Lack of commitment.
That
in it for the long haul, regardless. I don't feel like, and I'll say this, I don't feel like people understand that. And it's kind of how I feel, what's going on. There's so much emotion behind it that there's nothing solid. So that's why I wanted to just kind of land on
that word commitment. Okay, you say commitment.
Yes.
No, you say it.
Commitment.
We're saying the same thing, but we may mean something totally different.
Yes.
And, I often say that the English language, when left up to interpretation, because that's a lot of times what happens, people could be upfront seeming like they're on one accord, but behind they're not on one accord. So I need to know what your level of commitment is.
Or your definition.
And then what your definition of commitment is. I need to know both. Because if your level of commitment to our marriage is like a 2, and then you define what that level is, that's unacceptable for me. So it's no need for us to go through a marriage for me to say yes when you're not truly committed to what a marriage is and what it needs to bring. And a lot of times people are not defining what commitment means, because they're thinking, okay, if I have a bad day or we're in a bad place, then I'm going to call this quits. We're going to call this quits. This is not working, for us. Or if me showing that I'm committed to the relationship means that, I'm meeting your need.
Right.
Like you're not needing to need anything, because I'm going to make sure whatever you need is met. And I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. Women want to know that their husband is all in, that they're committed to the relationship, that they're going to make sure all the needs are taken care of. And if you can't deliver on that, then it's no need of us walking in a commitment, And I think that piece is most important, because if a man is not committed to me on that level, because we're talking about levels, right? Because there's levels to this. If you're not able to be committed to me on that level, then I'm not sure that you're deserving of my commitment. You're not deserving of my commitment. And that's my personal perspective on commitment and where it lies. Now, I don't know that any of that is biblical. Okay. So I didn't say the word said any of that. I'm just saying that's an Eleshia-ism. Is that what it is?
Eleshia-ism.
Okay, that's an Eleshia-ism, right? I think when it comes to the biblical perspective of what commitment is, I think God always talks about, especially when it comes to marriage, right? He often refers to marriage as what it's like for the relationship with Christ,
Yes.
And so when you talk about that relationship in itself is long suffering. And I think a lot of times we fall out of the school of long suffering because, you
Mhm.
know, it doesn't feel
Oh.
or
How about the part that we say we're suffering when what we're going through is not suffering?
Mhm,
Like that's really not suffering.
mhm,
Like disagreeing with your spouse is not suffering. Them not having as much money as you would like for them to have is not suffering.
Hold up, wait a minute. Wait a
Yes,
minute.
no, that may be a trial.
define that a little bit.
Yeah, well, because that may be a trial.
Right.
A
Define
trial is simply something you're going through that you feel that that may be overwhelming, or you can't handle, or or test. Maybe you can, but suffering is different.
Yes.
Suffering almost says that there's no hope, almost like I can't get through it. And money in a marriage is not suffering. Why am I saying this? Because you just said it, Pastor E, we tend to give definitions to things that shouldn't be.
Yes.
Like now, if you say we're having a test in our marriage over our money, okay, but you're not suffering if your house has 5 rooms and it's 2 of you. You're not suffering. Now, let's say it was so bad and you were in a shelter and you guys couldn't get out. I might allow you to say suffer. But if you're in a 2-bedroom apartment, 3-bedroom apartment, the bills are paid, you all have food, you don't have all the luxuries you want, you're not suffering. Don't use words that create even more dearth or death to your situation. You get what I'm saying? Like, and people do that, and they'll take this thing so deep, and it's like, oh, tell me what's going on. And then when you share what's going on, you say, well, that's tough. And I'm gonna give you tough, but that's something you all can get. That's no reason to leave your spouse. That's no reason to throw in the towel. That's a reason to keep arguing. I'm gonna give you that. Y'all can disagree. You can not agree on things, but just because you're not able to do everything you want to do financially, take those trips you want to go on.
Yes.
it goes back to the vision.
Yeah, but
Right.
I'm just saying you do need to visit. I just want everybody who hears this at home to know you're not suffering. You're having a trial. It's difficult because there are things you want, but see, that's the problem with it, because suffering has its own definition that it doesn't matter what we think. It's like truth. Truth is truth, whether you want. Suffering has a definition. Trials, that's why I want to say you may be going through a trial, but you ain't going through suffering where you need to leave your spouse. Nobody needs to leave their spouse because we can't do everything we want to do financially. That's not a reason. Or we can't, we're making love, we're having sex, but we're not constantly swinging off that's a trial. That's not suffering. And all I'm saying is people get divorced sometimes because they mislabel their experience.
Yes.
If you label it properly, then you can deal with it properly with God. I hope that makes sense.
It did. It did. And I feel like Pastor E has a rebuttal that she wants to share.
She got one you want to hear. That's all. Don't play. Don't play with me, Cletus. She got one that you wants to hear. See, they all want to hear the man of God.
No, I just think, we go back to, suffering. We go back to what that suffering word and that
See, because I got people of color here that they don't want
and
it.
words just land differently.
Yeah, I don't care how it
with
lands.
me.
Let's look
when
at
you talk about with the word suffer. What does it say?
the state of undergoing pain,
Ooh, and
distress, or
Okay.
hardship.
Oh.
And you're not going through pain, distress, or hardship because you can't get
No,
everything you want. No, that's not pain or hardship or distress.
So it goes back to all 3 of those sounds like suffering to me, right?
Yes.
And I think when 2 parties come together and they decide, and have this vision for their marriage. And they say, okay, these are some of the things that we want to experience, we want to do together. And you have one person pursuing those things and doing those things to make that happen. And the other person is just existing. They're not contributing. They're not trying to make things happen. They're just existing. So then now I'm suffering in this marriage. Not
No.
because, no, wait.
You're going through a trial.
I'm not. No,
You're not suffering.
Because we talked about what we both talked about, things that made us feel like the relationship was fulfilling, right? And so when it comes to love, we have defined what makes me feel loved. Okay, so for some people, is when I flip the switch, the lights come on, right? That's somebody. That's because there's levels to this, right? So that's somebody. As long as the lights come on, then I'm good. That's fulfilling. I'm not suffering. Well, guess what? My perception of my lights always came on growing up. So that's basic to me.
Right.
So I basically believe that the man should work and pay the bills, and the lights should come on. I mean, contribute. I'm just saying that's just like basic. That is basic one-on-one, right? Basic. Now, where we live and the lights come on is different, But basic one-on-one, you should go to work and the lights come on.
And that's why I didn't say that they shouldn't come on.
But we talk about when that is not happening, sugar, then we are suffering. There's a hardship. Read that definition. Now we're in hardship space,
right,
where you're no longer contributing to the household that can make the lights come on. And so
we're going through a trial. But let me tell you, hardship.
How long does the trial last? So
hold on. Suffering is, again, I'm willing to relent on it. Yes. Suffering is we're outdoors and we're having to go to shelter, live with the family member. Trial is we can eventually pay the bill, but you're not doing enough. That's a trial.
No, I'm paying the bill because you're not doing your part.
Right, that's a trial.
That's no trial.
It is, because what if you were to get sick and you can't pay?
And so if I get sick and we can't pay, we get put out.
No, I'm saying vice versa. If you were sick and you couldn't pay and I had to pay the bill, would that be suffering for me? Could I say to myself, I'm suffering because my wife is sick and she can't help me pay the bill?
Well, I think,
yeah. No, that's a problem, because that's not suffering. That's a trial. No, that's a different, but you're not suffering.
But see, here's the thing. I can go through trials all by myself. And I don't need to be in a relationship where it's going to be trial after. I mean, not like that.
People, I want y'all to know that she does not speak for the leadership church. No. She is speaking on her own. Of course, she does not speak for the leadership church. No, it's like you
got me going. So you can see that this is a work in progress going on here. But I think what's important and how this plays out for someone who might be watching is communication,
yes,
and the expectations and how a definition lands. Yes. And so that's a good takeaway.
Yes.
Is that make sure you're on the same page and saying the same thing. So we're gonna let them work that out in private.
Well, you know what's wrong though, right? She's been spoiled for 20 years. So that's why she would say,
or is deserving.
She's been spoiled for 20 years. That's why she would say it's suffering. Her niece is sitting over there shaking her head saying, yeah, that's what's wrong with her. That's why she would call it suffering. My sister Nikki would say, exactly. I've been trying to tell her that for 20 years. That's why she would call it suffering.
But you have demonstrated a certain behavior and way that she's adopted, and so she's used to.
Yeah, because I don't want a divorce and her to tell the judge he had me suffering.
He rolled his eyes. Well, I think this has been a great conversation, but there's one last one that I want to circle back to that just talks about a successful marriage. Tell me one thing that you believe has made your marriage successful.
I definitely think it has a lot to do with vision. you know, coming back to that. We keep coming back
Yes.
to it. I think sometimes in the beginning you may say, oh, we have a vision for our marriage, and then how many times do you revisit that vision?
That's good.
Because you may have to modify the vision or revamp it. And we do an audit annually. We come back to the vision
Love
to
it.
see how we're carrying out the vision, you know. And I think that part is imperative, because the vision incorporates all aspects. It includes finances, intimacy. It includes spirituality.
Right.
It includes career. Is he happy? You know, am I happy? You
Right.
know, those components make it really important to have a vision for your marriage.
One thing I would say that I don't think happens enough is early on in our marriage, we were very close to other married couples. Like we spent a lot of time. When I tell you, I'll say our first 5 years, we were under the wing of married couples. Like, and that right there helped. And I see a lot of individual marriages today. And I feel really bad because married people don't get together enough. They don't visit each other's houses. They don't say, let's get something to eat. Let's go to, like, I can say for me and Pastor E, if we don't do a group scheduling, we don't have married people who say, hey, let's catch up. A lot of married people that say, let's just do a couple. Like, we have to do a church thing.
Right.
And I think that's really sad where I see marriage today, because that's not how my marriage grew up. My marriage grew up where we were at each other's house. We were spending time, and they had children. So somebody might say, well, I got kids. Well, they had children.
Right.
We didn't. And they kept us under their wings. And if you have pastors, even if you may be older than them, but you've allowed them to be your pastor, you need to, and you see they have a successful marriage, you need to spend time around them. You need to spend time gleaming from them. We had that opportunity. It was vital in us being here 20 years later. And it's something that I don't see. And I wish more men would lead that with their spouse to say, hey, babe, hey, I'm going to reach out to so-and-so. We're going to all connect. And you can really learn a lot in doing that.
Great, great. Another opportunity that's a perfect stopping place. And that's a wrap, guys. I think, again, the conversation was so extremely helpful. And I'm going to be honest that as I sat here, you guys had me choking for a minute, but as I sat here, I was gleaning from it. And so, again, thank you for sharing those nuggets. When you see a successful marriage, then you want to latch on to that, because marriage is hard work. We'll come back to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for joining us. And thank you, pastors, for being vulnerable and sharing some of those nuggets. We will look forward to seeing your comments in the chat, but continue to join us for our closer experience. This is kind of information you get. It helps you get through your week and deal with real issues.
Yeah.
Life is lifing. And so stay tuned. We'll be back here next week. Until then, have a great evening, and we will see you soon.